live stream, so.
Okay.
I've been calling it.
Yeah. So he's gonna come in next week and we'll chat a little bit.
Allergies on the job.
Better be organized and ready.
Not
Yeah.
a orderly at this point.
Right, that is.
Everything going on set. I didn't have a conversation.
6:30, call the meeting to order. Certified compliance with the open records law.
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gillis.
Here.
Councilmember Hartung.
Here.
Councilmember Hooker.
Here.
Councilmember Raisler.
Here.
Councilmember Schneider.
Here.
Councilmember Schofield.
Here.
All present.
Next, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Somebody would like to make a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make the motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and second to adopt the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. It's adopted. Next, we move on to public comments. Is there anybody who would like to make any public comments? The floor is open. Did we have anybody contact us to give us any? Okay. No scheduled appearances tonight. Consent agenda. The following matters may be acted upon by the City Council utilizing a single vote. Individual items which any member wishes to address in greater detail or as a separate item on the regular agenda may be removed from the consent agenda upon the request of any council member. We have the minutes from the regular council meeting from January 13th, 2021, and a bartender license for Nathan in Sidewalk for the handy bar.
Everything is fine.
Somebody like to make a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It is approved. Next, we move on to the business agenda, mayor's report. Just a few things to talk about. Continuing having conversations with the city administrator and the council president. I have said that we will, that the city hall will remain, the doors will remain as far as the lobby closed until the end of February, shooting for the 1st of March. Obviously, it's been working out just fine. Anybody who's got to do business here, we've been able to do it. But obviously, I'm also a light at the end of the tunnel person, and as the numbers continue to drop. But as I said, I've set the date for March the 1st is when we would open back up. As far as the mask mandate that obviously has been put into place, I guess we'll know tomorrow as it goes to the state assembly if there's any difference in that. At that point, it's not going to make any difference as far as what's going to say in City Hall, except for the fact that it will be highly recommended that everybody that comes into City Hall wears a mask. So that's the way I'm approaching that subject. First of all, I'd like to thank the staff in Cedar Corp for meeting last night with our citizens concerning their NAV project. I think I was here for a few minutes to start out, and I think it was a great opportunity to meet, and obviously we'll have a report from Superintendent Gillis when we get to his part of it. A couple of congratulations to go out. Jeff Dowdy, named EMT of the Year by the Durand Ambulance Service, was announced. So obviously, congratulations to Jeff. We have a lot of wonderful people in our ambulance staff, and it's good to see those folks that work hard gets recognition. Also, Luke Hayden, Fireman of the Year, for Firefighter of the Year for the Durand Fire Department. That was good, so congratulations to Firefighter Hayden. Also, the new sign is up and operational on the building up there. Bright lights up nice and so on and so forth. But again, obviously, we were happy to get the new sign up in front of the fire hall and the ambulance building up there. And so again, congratulations to all those folks. That's all I've got for my report. Any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to the administrator's report.
You might hear, to start with, Mayor asked me to basically fill everyone in on two items that we've finally been able to kind of put to rest. First being the library summary of basically the final payment that we just received last week for our claim piece. And then to talk just a little bit about the final accounting for our routes to recovery state funding. So starting with the library piece, and I won't go through everything in complete detail. You're all familiar with the process, that basically we had just over $29,000 in a potential claim. We filed that claim earlier in 2020. We were turned down because basically the point was that we were hindering their ability to get any sort of retribution back from the person. They were going to wait until she was actually sentenced and see how that was going to play out, because our point was, we know there's going to be restitution. She had indicated that she was willing to give some. And so ultimately, when she was sentenced back in July, she was ordered for the $29,000 in restitution. Basically, the court gave them some time to figure out how much she could afford. We didn't get that information until basically the first week of November, that basically she would be willing to pay, that she would be able to pay $100 a week in restitution of that $29,000. So we contacted the insurance company, explained the situation. They basically got back to us and said, okay, we will pay the claim as long as you file the subrogation report for allowing it to collect that restitution. And so, great news. Well, that same week, we heard from the library board that they had one of the larger pieces, or a good chunk of what that initial claim was for a $6,400 bill to Amazon for basically, from Ms. Blunt, had ordered some things personal. We didn't pay that bill, basically, until, and then the library board was working with Amazon, that we paid the bill and we got our insurance settlement. Well, they were contacted by Amazon, or a collection arm of Amazon, saying, look, at this point, we'll take 40 cents on the dollar. We'll take roughly $2,500 of that $6,400 bill, and we'll call it good. And again, library board explained to them, look, we're just waiting. It's not that we're being delinquent. And in fact, they had another account set up that they were working through Amazon. But ultimately, Amazon said, no, we're fine with this. So the library board voted to, and I'm looking at Mark, because Mark's on the board, that they voted to basically accept that lesser amount and pay it. Well, clearly then our claim went down. So then I contacted the insurance company again, explained the situation. They thanked us for, again, our honesty and everything else. So ultimately, the final adjustment was the total restitution then owed is about $25,230. Less the $1,000 deductible. We received last week a check for $24,230. That basically puts the whole thing to rest. Of that amount then, $21,645 was allocated back to, we'll call it the library donated funds, a memorial account that they had. That was all donated money, not a penny of taxpayer dollars. However, there was about $2,585 appropriated checks that were from taxpayer-funded dollars with the library. Basically, they got kind of two separated fund balance accounts. The library has been made whole with just a couple exceptions. One, there's still a $1,000 deductible that they had to pay. However, they're eventually going to get that back when Ms. Blunt finishes at the tail end of her restitution, whenever that would be. So they'll ultimately get that back. And then finally, they have spent just over $3,000 in legal related, through basically losing her as an employee and some of the legal pieces of working through this. But otherwise, again, the whole situation is done as far as we're concerned, and the library has been made whole. Any questions on that? A lot of people to thank in that one, but a lot of hard work and a lot of, but all well done, I guess, on that. Finally, back to the basically our routes to recovery funding money. Again, I basically shared with you that we had just barely over $50,000 that we had allocated to us, roughly 34 to the city initially back in June, and then over the course, right toward the tail end, we had three local townships, Durand, Waterville, and Frankfort, that allocated some of their money that they couldn't use to us, which would have pushed us just over $50,000. Ultimately, we basically had claims for just over $48,000, and everything we claimed, we got back. So just to summarize that a little bit. Again, a reminder that these monies were all for COVID-related items and unexpected, unbudgeted items. So right off the bat, we knew one main thing we were going to have was as soon as Officer Bonner, our SRO, was basically, his hours were greatly reduced when the school shut down in March. we knew that would be a big part of our plan. And ultimately, that turned out to be, through the nets, Dan and I went through the nets of, okay, what is, because Brandon obviously was then working for a part-timer, so technically we didn't lose that, but in the end, we put in a claim for almost $8,400, and that was probably our biggest piece of this puzzle. Some of the other things we knew we were gonna have, and some of the things that we were kind of scrambling to go through, we didn't have a lot of needs. A lot of municipalities had needs for elections. Recall, again, we had obviously some major elections and primaries, but for us, the state was pretty good with PPEs for all of us, and even though we had a number of people that poll workers that didn't come this year, Matt and I filled in, and a number of you were here. So again, we didn't spend a whole lot of extra money on elections, so that was kind of all pretty early. But I guess some of our unexpected pieces that really added up, we had basically just over $8,000 in basically paid leave for people who were out on COVID, on quarantine and things of that nature. Of course, that was completely unexpected, but those two of our bigger items. Just some general stuff, from the standpoint of some work we had the attorneys to do on just responding to the Families First Corona Act. Some additional cleaning before and after the elections, things of that nature, because we could not include our standard cleaning, because we were doing that anyway. So again, budgeted, and so that fell off the map pretty quickly. So as we got toward the end of this, and when we were first told this had to be spent basically about the first week in November, so a lot of work with Chief King, Director Miller, and Stan went through some stuff, but we really didn't have a whole lot for PD, and they also had another grant that he knew that he was going to be dealing with that was separate from this. So we got down to the end, and we got the additional money from town of Durand, Waterville, and Frankfurt that, to be honest with you, we were kind of scrambling to spend some money, and some things that we were looking at for some last minute pieces that the departments could use. Two of the bigger pieces we got, though, we did get two portable UV sanitizers for city vehicles, police, fire, anyone that needed them. Also, I got some transport tents for COVID patients within the ambulance piece. There's another, it was almost $1,000 for those. And then when we got right toward the end, we started looking at, seriously, we were looking at, what can we do to spend some of this money, some things that we might be spending for ambulance and fire in the future. So fire department did wind up getting some additional computers. A lot of turnout gear. We got some additional turnout gear. We're talking, we were already in the budget discussion, so Jamie's talking about getting some additional turnout gear. We thought, we stuck with the state. Would that be possible to have basically backup turnout gear if we had issues where, firefighter would have some infected gear and things of that nature? And that was kind of wink, or not wink, but thumbs up, but not officially until you submit it. Same for ambulance. Had a fair amount of gear and sweatshirts and some of their gear that they were going to order anyway, so that every member would basically have a backup pair in their locker. And the final piece, the only one that I really had, when Jamie and I were talking through this, we had about $7,000 left specifically for fire, because I think I pointed this out, but so both Waterville and Durand of almost $20,000 that they. So again, we respect those wishes and thank them again for their donations. So we got toward the end, and finally it was basically the tables and chairs that the fire department was slated to order. And again, we already had that budgeted. That was the only item. We thought, we'll submit that and see. And we explained it. We already had this budgeted, but again, this is for social distancing and things of that nature, and they approved it ultimately. So to me, that was about the only stretch. But fortunately, it was approved, so that helped us out a fair amount. So again, when all was said and done, $48,000, of which the $8,400 for Brandon services, over $8,000 for leave. Ultimately, fire department got almost $19,000, ambulance $8,900. So I don't think that we left a whole lot on the table. I think again, our public safety people were very, very satisfied. Anything else on that?
Scott, a question on the sick time. If someone tested positive as a result of being at work, the government paid for their sick leave?
Basically, so, and I should have explained this, Mark, thanks for bringing that up. As part of the Families First Corona Response Act, we had basically, even if you had sick time on the books or any other accrued time, every person was authorized up to 80 hours, full-time employee.
80 hours.
80 hours of paid leave without having to touch their accrued time. So that's basically what this paid for. So the city obviously paid them, and then we were reimbursed through this. And at the end of the day, those that fell under the 80 hours did not have to use any of their earned vacation. That is done, yes. That ended at the end of the year. Yep. And that was not picked up under any new coronavirus act. So. Okay, so that's that.
Thank you for putting those two. I had requested both those reports. I thought it was important for the whole council to hear. Obviously, they were involving finances that came in. We sort of heard general numbers. Let's see the specific, just so we were all on the same page and know exactly. So again, thanks for getting those together for this meeting.
I wanted to bring up, maybe you read about the county block grant, piece that was in the paper last week. Basically, I mean, it literally was a couple hours before our last council meeting on the 14th. I was contacted by the county, and they're talking about, so at one point the county had about $185,000 in block grant funding. That basically they and a lot of other municipalities about 2 years ago, the state looked back and said, if you're not using it, we're going to take it back. And so essentially they kept it kind of in, I guess you call it a little state of limbo, or in a segregated account for a while, and then got back to the municipalities and said, we'd be willing to give this back to you under basically certain auspices under the block grant funding for either ADA compliancy type issues or blight elimination. So basically we were kind of, do you have anything that comes to mind? Well, clearly the Bubba's building came to mind. So they had a meeting on Thursday the 15th. Matt and I attended basically to make our case for funding for the Bubba's building, and we just put out an approximation of $60,000 for the raising of that building. A number of questions came up. Matt was very helpful with some questioning because it was a case that basically they were looking for 3 programs to submit, and they really wanted these to be slam dunks because if they got turned down at the state level, they were going to lose their money. So there were a number of some parks programs that were, I'd say nicely, were a little iffy from the standpoint of the bounds for the block grant piece. And so Matt chimed in on some questioning regarding how difficult some of those block grants are to get for parks and the reasoning why. And ultimately, the Bubba's project was funded. We recommended at the administration level, that was the committee we were at. And then last week, Wednesday, the county board authorized that project move forward as well. So I think Marie and Kevin with the county are finalizing the application by the end of the month, but I think things are looking pretty good there. So that would, I don't know how soon, they don't know how soon the state's going to respond, but clearly that would be a real positive for both the city and county as the county moves forward on whether it's tax deed or they work something out with them. They're clearly heading in the direction of owning that property. So we'll keep you up to date on that as we know more. There was a rural fire meeting last week that attended. We talked about the fire pay plan that Chief King had talked about during our budget process. That was basically recommended to go to their full board at their annual meeting. That annual meeting will be actually on the 27th of April on a Tuesday. Mr. Hartung was kind enough to move that so some of us could attend. Because typically it's a Wednesday night and a lot of us can't get there. So that was a positive. Talked a little bit about the ladder truck issue in the process, and I think it's fair to say that we're going to talk about that some more at public safety here in the next month or two of really getting a plan together and discussing the pros and cons and the needs of that potential large purchase. But again, good meeting, and that went very well. Just final piece, I'm sure you all heard the vaccination news that we got, the county got 1,000 doses this week. We'll continue to help push that message and encourage folks to go that route. One piece that we did learn is that apparently under the next phase that's coming up, we'll call it another one, I don't know if that's 1B plus, in the March area is that the public works employees, the utility employees aren't included in that. I think we still have 2 people that weren't covered under the fire department fees that work for public works, so that's a positive, I think, for those employees. And we'll keep, posted on the rest of, as we move forward. We'd still like to get those poll workers in, back to the mayor's point of opening. Clearly, the building will be open on the 16th of February when we have the election. We have to have it open, obviously, and again, I would like to hope that some of those folks that are covered under the 65 plus will have their shots by then. That'll be working for us. We'll see how that goes. But that's all I have.
Any questions for the city administrator?
Well, I'd just like to say, Scott and Matt, thanks you guys for getting to work on the Bubba situation. That might have fallen through the cracks if you guys hadn't gotten up there.
Well, I mean, even though it was kind of a last minute notice, but we certainly appreciate the counties, they understand too. That's, it's a plus for them to get rid of that building, plus for us. We both benefit, and again, glad they listened to us and some good questions, and glad to move forward.
Any other questions for the city administrator? None, we'll move on to the police department. Chief Ridgway?
Nothing for the monthly report, just the items that are actually on the agenda.
Okay. Discussion regarding snow emergency parking.
I just wanted to give an update on this. We had a technology error for our downtown snow removal on January 16th. We have multiple ways that we notify the public for when we're doing a downtown snow removal. The first one is obviously signs at every entrance to the city of Durand. We have a snow emergency line at the pool that we put the message on at the pool regarding snow emergency. We have our Facebook page where we put our snow emergency information on it. And then we have a system called Nixle. It's an alert system that you get a text message or an email regarding snow emergencies. Everything, our procedures were followed, our procedures have worked, they've been working well, everything was followed the day before for the notices, and for some reason the Nixle alert was sent, but people didn't receive it. So there was a glitch in the technology, but the city of Durand, we did everything we could to notify people that that snow emergency was going to be, or snow removal was going to be occurring the next morning at 2 a.m. And we had multiple people that were parked in violation of that ordinance, and so we had to tow them and cite them. And so we're working with Nixle to try to get our own. Right now we use Pepin County's system. They send out the messages for us, but we are investigating getting our own Nixle as well, and then kind of just some backup, just kind of keeping an eye on things. This last snow emergency, I made sure I talked to some people in the city, make sure they got the message, just to make sure the system was working properly during the last snowfall, and it was. I'm just not sure what occurred during that snowfall, but unfortunately it happened, and so we're dealing with it. But our system works, and we just had a technology error.
Rhonda's vehicle was towed.
Real quick, Brian, real quick, because this is our discussion, but
That's fine. I mean, I was going to do it in the public comment, but I figured I'd do it here. But my concern is if we're going to use this system and you're going to tell people that's what you should rely on, because not everyone's going to rely on Facebook, and not everyone even knows of the phone number. My truck would have also been towed because I wouldn't have received anything. And if we're going to have something like that, even the school, Greg Doverspike, still calls me to say we're having a 2-hour delay, even though I'm getting the automatic email. And I'm very concerned that a request for a Nixle sent out and no one noticed it wasn't working until after the fact.
yeah.
And now we're stuck with a $95 bill.
We got an ordinance, so.
Yeah, but even the ordinance there, Steve
It
says,
2 inches.
but Steve, it says to the curb line, and half of that street was plowed. It says to the curb line. It does not say curb to curb line. It says to the curb line.
I think we're talking about things, it's just curb to curb in residential. I don't believe your text about storm downtown
There's-
talks about curb to curb, correct?
There's two
There is
different-
terminology.
Yeah, and there's two different things. In fact, I had some people ask me about that. Concerning, I said that there's two different sets of rules for the downtown area and one for the residential. The one thing that I had said, and I have said the same thing to the city administrator, I've talked about it with Alderperson Gillis, who's the head of safety, and then also with the chief, is if there was a problem one time, let's just get it figured out and move on, and try to get this figured out. If we have to do something different with our Nixle, that's fine. If there's a different situation as far as getting information to the radio station, then the chief could work that out with,
And I already did that during the last snowfall. I had made sure that I sent a message to Brian and said, hey, we posted it on Facebook, and then he shared it. And I told Brian the day after, on the 16th, when he called me, I said, that's a step that I'll add to our process to make sure that we posted
And,
it on
yeah.
Facebook.
And it doesn't hurt to have that extra step in there to do that. That's, my biggest thing about it is, and I said at the beginning about are we gonna have a major conversation to go on and on and on about, no, I think if we just have to make a few different approaches to it, and again, if we have a glitch in the system, let's just get that corrected and move on.
Not against these extra steps that we do, but our ordinance also says the only thing we have to do is provide that snow line. So I'm a fan of technology and social media, don't get me wrong, but that's not always 100%. That snow line's 100%. It's in the phone book. It's all over the place. Maybe I agree with Nixle and getting our own, but I think we need to push people to check that snow line, because all they gotta do is pick their phone up and dial that number, and what we're doing is on there. That's all we have to do is that snow line.
Yeah,
So
but
just
we
keep
work-
that in
but we-
mind. All the social media is not something that has to be done. I like it, it works, but that snow line is the go-to.
We work for taxpayers though. So I disagree with you. I think we have to do everything in our power to do what we can for every resident in our city. So if the radio station, that is the one way I listen. I don't have Nixle, I don't do that, but every avenue we can is what we have to do. I mean, that's our jobs. We get paid by the citizens of this town. And if one person is Facebook only, we gotta put it on Facebook. We gotta try to get access to every person we can. So,
But there is some personal responsibility that has to take place here as well. It's not always just on us.
yes,
That's all I'm trying to get over.
There is personal
I'll
responsibility.
digress.
But downtown, you have people living in above buildings that literally moved here in September and have no clue anything about Durand. They literally just moved into town. And I get that over time, you learn what the community's doing and you understand it. But we can't just assume everybody knows. I've owned a business downtown for 20 years, and snow removal's always been a hot button in this town, and it always will be. So,
But I would say that we are going above and beyond the call. That's the only thing. And again, if there was a glitch in one thing that came out at one snowstorm, but the idea of, if we can add a couple other things to obviously broaden that message, it helps.
yeah.
And I think that's important, but at the end of the day, I don't think that we're trying to keep this a secret by any means.
I just know when you pull into town at 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning, whatever, and you're coming to your apartment and you pull up to the curb and there's no snow on it, you're probably pulling up to it going in. I understand why we don't want to park there, because you have to have a road for people to go around, all the big heavy equipment. I understand that. Not everybody understands that. My street's plowed, my spot's plowed, I should be able to use it. So that's the,
I understand that's the mentality, but again, we could go back to the other way and just leave the snow there, and then, not to park it. I mean, the double-edged sword there.
well, you can argue if you want to have that conversation. I suffered through the last snowfall, and every business had their street plowed in front of it. All the way around mine wasn't plowed. 10 feet out into the street, I had to shovel to get people into my business on Sunday night. So the frustration's real. It's not real for every business every day, but it's real. I have to shovel into the street to get people into my building. I literally shoveled 10 feet into the street to get people into my building. I drove my truck into parking spots and shoveled out so they can open their door and walk into my business. It's a frustration. It's not always that way. Last year, we were plowing it to the middle, and we pushed it to sky modes, and then we had parking spots. I just say as drivers, as plow truck drivers and stuff, we need to I was down there for 3 hours, and nobody was parked there the whole time. It's like, why aren't we pushing this in and making it disappear? Put it to the middle, so people can park.
I would say I agree with you, Herb, but we need to know those things. And so if there are suggestions, complaints, we would like to hear them. And if it's true, and again, we will consider and we will talk, and again, I understand Matt's comments well enough that again, he's empathetic to this, but from the standpoint of, we'll do what we can to get the word out. Clearly in this case, if this was a Nixle problem, we don't control Nixle. We control that phone line 100%, so that's probably our best bet. Facebook, pretty darn reliable. We'll continue with that as well. If there are, we've talked about downtown, plowing even in the short time I've been here. And I think we've come up with ideas and shown that we're willing to work on things to make them better. So if there are suggestions out there, we're always going to listen to them.
Well, and actually, we're talking two separate things here. Nixon's a warning about that there's just no emergency.
Right.
Herb's talking about the fact is that we were going to make an effort to clean off some parking stalls next to, on each block, to make some available.
Well, the streets are plowed perfect everywhere else except for around my block.
And
They weren't targeting me. I'm not saying they're targeting
No.
I'm not saying that.
Well, what I'm saying is,
I'm just saying that they particularly that on a Sunday, they had the ability to plow snow a certain direction and make it disappear. And on my street, they didn't do that.
to comment on what you said, when they came in at
Yep.
4 o'clock in the morning,
Yep.
there was cars parked there. They did what they could did, and then they moved on to their other streets. And that time that they're there, if there's stuff in their way, they're gonna move on and go do their other jobs. Unfortunately, on a Sunday, we don't go back around and double check and triple check stuff because we're on overtime. It's get it done the first time and get out of there. So that one I can verify, there was cars parked there when they were down there doing that at that time.
And I get that, but the frustration that a person has when they own a business and they walk into their business and they realize that they might as well not open that day is a frustration. It's a frustration.
and the thing about it is, remember, we made the decision a few years ago to allow overnight parking on those streets 2 nights of the week, which happened to be Friday night and Saturday night. And if it happens to be that the snow falls during that time, there can be somebody legally parked there, because we don't do the plowing till the next day. Had we not done that, there wouldn't have been anybody parked there, or we could have had them towed. Or cited, we wouldn't be, on that, we wouldn't have done that.
And there's always gonna be, I think what we have works, and I know we all go above and, we try to go above and beyond what we have works. Snowfalls are never black and white. They're the most grayest thing you're ever gonna come into, and every single one of them is different, and every single one of them has to get treated different, and we can all talk till we're blue in the face about it, but you can go to any other town too, and does is far better than just about the majority of them around here. It's kudos to you guys for the equipment and the budgeting for us to do that, and my staff and Stan's staff for getting the job done while they're out there. But it's very difficult to sit and talk about snow removal when every snowstorm is physically different. And the big key to that, one car can mess up a whole entire block downtown. So, they do truly do the best that they can do.
I think it's been pretty good the last couple of years overall. Some people got to sacrifice here and there. My biggest issue with it is same as 15 years ago. Friday and Saturday nights, bars are open till 2:30. Gotta have them going at 2. Well, I brought it up way before I was on council. I think it's ridiculous. But that's another topic.
And Travis, I agree with the 2 o'clock on the weekends. That is the hard thing for an officer to go into an establishment
Oh,
half
yeah.
an hour away from closing and tell them, you're gonna have to tell your people to get out of here. But that's the way the ordinance is set up, it's in your guys' power.
Yeah.
But our officers just have to do what the ordinance says
Right.
and what the policy.
And I know
And
it.
I agree, it is.
They
it is
all say
hard.
they know it, but it's not the officer's fault. I'm like, yep, I disagree with it, so I think that should be a future discussion as well.
And then, Herb, on your comments, you know, I said it on a Facebook comment when someone was complaining about it that night. If you have suggestions to make it better, let us know. And when I talked to Brian on the phone about it, he said, you know, I need to be notified so that I can get it out on the air. We've corrected that issue. We offer Nixle, we offer Facebook. Like Matt said, all we have required to do is the phone, but we've done so many things to try to get our community to see, you know, to be aware of these ordinances. And, you know, I put a post out in November, beginning of the snow season, that says, here are all of our parking rules. And just a forewarning of these are our rules. I do it every November to try to get the word out there that sign up for Nixle, check our Facebook page out, you know, and just give them as much advance notice as possible. So we do the best we can to try to notify the public. And if we have new tenants coming in, and I know you do it, but we need our other landlords to also do it and say, sign up for Nixle, sign up for the, you know, like the Durand Police Department Facebook page. Here's the snow emergency phone line. I think the city takes enough steps to properly notify the community regarding our rules. And I think, you know, the residents need to also take some steps to make sure they're following our rules by using the resources that we offer. If somebody has a suggestion like Brian did, let's put it on WRDN. We look at it, yep, that's a good idea, Brian. We did it for the last snowfall. So if somebody ever has a suggestion, I'm open to listening to them, but we offer plenty of ways for people to be notified regarding these issues.
And anybody that rents, that has ever rented, that doesn't have a designated parking lot, should have half a head of common sense to either call the cop shop or talk to a landlord who I talked to about figuring this out. It's common sense.
And I had, at the last couple snowfalls, I've had a number of conversations with different people. And again, I actually appreciate them asking me, because hopefully I know the answer to it, at least to the best of my ability. When I had to explain the difference between residential parking and down, there's a difference, you know, and this is the way that it's handled. And I've had to answer those questions, and I'm happy to do that, and trying to get as people as well informed as possible, you know, as we can. And usually try to say, if I don't know the answer, I'll either find it out or tell you who to go to. So, okay. So anything else about this? We've heard what the chief has to say. If we do want to bring it up, if the subject that Councilmember Hooker wants to talk about with that, to put on a future agenda with the safety committee.
Sure.
But that's, we're basically talking a half hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, just 2 days a week, 2 nights a week, or 2 mornings.
So if there's
Be
interest,
Saturday
I
morning and
said,
Sunday
let's
morning.
put it on the safety committee for discussion.
So are we, the people that got towed, are they paying their fines?
Chief?
Since Nixle didn't happen?
Yeah, because we followed the ordinance, we notified Facebook, we notified the snow emergency line, we did everything that we're required to by ordinance. The city has to pay those tow bills,
I know that.
so it wouldn't be fair to the rest of the taxpayers to fork over the $75 for those citations.
I guess my question is, with that is, if you gave me Nixle as my option, and that's my option, I signed up for it, and it didn't send it to me.
Or we're going back to, there's the snow line, that's all there is in the ordinance, is snow line. They're going above and beyond trying to get it out there.
There's a snow removal Nixle alert, and when it doesn't alert you, and that's your only form of, that you're using as your alert.
That's not the only form though, whether, that's
But
just
that's the one
because
you
you're
use.
using it.
Well, you shouldn't have to go look at 5 different things, just to make sure that they all say
Phone
that
line.
you don't have to.
It's one phone number.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a phone. Call
But
the
if
line.
if Nixle's the way you get alerted, is what I'm saying.
This is a redundant conversation here.
Yeah.
Going to-
I kind of agree, though. I think maybe it just seems old-fashioned. I mean, calling a phone line seems like totally 1982, where everybody nowadays wants to get on their computer or their phone. And it just seems like.
I understand you can make the phone call to the phone line. I'm just saying that if I'm a person that is tech guy and I want my phone to tell me when Nixle's gonna alert me, it does it every time and all of a sudden it doesn't.
Not everybody has a phone that gets a text. Everybody can call a phone number. I bet everybody's got it.
Do you understand what I'm saying, though? We have 4 or 5 different options.
I understand completely.
Options.
Yeah.
You pick an option. They pick,
Or use them all.
they pick Nixle. That's the one option.
We're
that
not
they-
saying pick one. We're saying these are what's out there for you.
Yeah.
So you have more
So
ways
if
than
you
one.
want to pick one,
You should never pick one when you got 6 when it
You always
goes
have
to
a
So, but the question comes back to the end of the day, is then I know what the ordinance says. The question is, do people sitting around these tables want to change the ordinance?
It seems like.
I mean, Herb, is that what you're telling
To
me?
me, this has nothing to do with the ordinance. This has to do with, you gave me a form of notification. It did not notify me, and now you told me. I get, you're supposed to know the ordinance, and you're supposed to, a guy that gets up and goes to work every day and comes home every night, he signs up for one form of communication. He's gonna have the Nixle send him a
Then
notice.
not
Herb,
most
wouldn't you
people-
have this conversation with the county then? Because it was the county that sent and it didn't work. We didn't,
I'm just
we
trying to be
didn't make
the
error.
voice of the 4, 5, 6, whoever got towed. I think it's,
I know.
I think it's,
Find out if the 4, 5, 6 had Nixle.
Yes.
It doesn't make any difference. We have options people can use. It didn't
well,
work.
so 3 in the morning, you wake up, you're like, oh, Nixle hasn't notified me, maybe I better check Facebook just in case. What? You pick
No,
one,
no,
you pick one.
Why not? Why not?
You
Why-
pick
why
one
not?
form. Nobody,
But also though, Herb, you have snow on the streets, you have piles of snow around. When you went and parked, when you look at it and they're gonna have to get these piles of snow out of here at some point?
I understand that. It's not about the snow, it's about literally the
Get what you're saying.
notification. That's all it is. That's all.
But the only other thing is about, I mean, I take personal responsibility to know I can't park in front of my house and I get the Nixle stuff and I get that, obviously, so on and so forth. But obviously, I know that if there's a snowstorm coming, I better plan ahead.
Regardless of what we do, there's personal responsibility. You're never gonna take that away. You're never gonna eliminate the personal responsibility portion of this. There is some, nobody can deny that there is not some personal responsibility. We can go above and beyond and do a million things, but there's still some personal responsibility.
We're not babysitters.
And the thing is too, you know, I understand it's not good if that's the only means of notification that you use is Nixle. I understand that. But what I also don't want to get into is we're going to avoid these citations, and then the rest of the taxpayers that follow the rules, that don't live downtown, that weren't parked downtown, now they have to pay somebody's towing bill and parking ticket because the system failed that we tried to use, but we had other options out there. So you're asking everybody else in the community to pay these towing bills for people that were parked down here that didn't follow the rules of the system. That's my problem with avoiding a citation. Those parking tickets are there, we have to pay the tow bills. I'm guessing the chief feels the same way as I do. You could avoid a citation if your staff did something wrong. In this case, all of our staff did everything right. So it truly was not the city's fault.
Maybe segueing it.
Exactly. It's nobody's fault. I get that. It's Nixle. Nixle was the fault. I get that.
I think segueing in that is, we follow ordinance to the T. So back to your, and I know you said it's not about the ordinance, but it truly is. So if you want to change ordinance, say that yes, Nixle is a form that the city will use, and I kind of get what you're hearing. You say, our ordinance says it's the phone line, but we're telling people Nixle's great. But hey, but when Nixle fails, we're falling back. So I do think, and we're going to talk about this a little further in agendas, the ordinances are black and white. And if you want them changed to reflect so officers can enforce exactly how they're written, we need to change it. So if you want to see Nixle in the ordinance, let us know, and again, we can add that to the safety.
As a
agenda as well.
landlord, that's what I tell my people. Here's a card. I give them a card. I think Stan even gave it to me. I give them a card that says Nixle on it. This is, if you want to know about snow removals, anything that's national, I think it's weather and everything, I think. But that's what I give them. I don't give them a copy of the ordinance and here's a phone number you can call and.
People I talk to, I give all 3 options. I don't give just one.
thing to also keep in mind, technology fails. As great as it is, it fails. It does. It's gonna happen. I'm surprised it hasn't happened before this. I'll be flat out honest with you. Technology fails.
I just find it amazing that all of you guys think that you're gonna check something 3 or 4 times. Oh, this place said it wasn't, oh, we're fine. Oh, I better check Facebook. Oh, I better check the phone line.
But the only one you
I call BS.
You know,
the phone
It's not
line
true.
is guaranteed every time, so if you have Nixles or one, have your phone line be the backup. I don't care, whichever one you get, have a backup for anything.
You know what I do heard? They said on the news all that day that we're supposed to get X amount of inches, it's over 2 inches.
I get it
Park
right.
on the street.
Our age, we're looking at all that. We're totally following that. But there's
They're
an
looking
age
at-
group
they're
that
looking at
doesn't.
on here.
They look at one thing. They didn't tell me, so I move on. So I struggle with us giving them citations. I mean, I guess they can fight it, I guess, or whatever, but
Yeah, I mean, they have the right if they want to fight, yeah.
I personally struggle with it. We gave them a way to communicate. It didn't communicate with them.
Herb, if there weren't anything else out there, if there was no signs that we are gonna reach 2 inches of snowfall, nowadays they talk about a half an inch snowfall like it's this huge blizzard coming towards us. If they didn't do that, and if you couldn't physically or visually see snow piled up on our main street, I'd probably be a little bit more, yeah, maybe we should probably look at eating these snow bills. If it was something that wasn't visually there, but it's visually there, it's talked about for weeks in advance with the media, that there's a snowstorm coming, and people know to keep an eye on it. And they should know that, hey, if there's a pile of snow at the end of Main Street, they're gonna do snow removal. So that's part of my reasoning for, another reason why I don't think that the toll bill should be voided.
We've been talking about this for a while, I don't know, how do we move off of this?
Oh,
Unless the mayor says to stand, make them go away. We don't have a say in what happens with these tickets,
No, that's
and these
fine.
fines.
No, and what I'm saying is, the one thing I said is, if there's anything else, the one thing for surely about the 230 thing is definitely something to get on the agenda for safety committee to discuss about possibly moving that by the half hour. It seems like the chief is in agreement with it. And Matt, is that something you could live with?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, because that's the biggest thing, because you gotta enforce it, you gotta plow it. I mean, that's in that particular case. But unless there's somebody else around now around the table that wants to say that there's something else that they want to talk about changing the ordinance or do something different, this is your opportunity right now, and like, again, I said, let's move on. Okay, we'll move on. Discussion on sidewalk, snow, and ice removal policy.
I guess I'll start this. It just, this was another one, it's clearly, it ties in with the emergency parking piece. There is a lot of chatter on Facebook, that past the snowfall, so it's kind of the converse. We have citizens out there that want people that don't sell their sidewalk. It says, 24 hours, I want you out there in the 25th hours, and there was even the suggestions that we want public works employees to be shoveling those sidewalks in the 25th hour. And so just a reminder of how we're handling this. Basically, it's really a complaint piece. We are not actively out there looking for people, and there are a number of people that have been willing to help with this. Our postal staff has been even handing out pieces and taking some, reports and addresses as well. What Stan and I did talk about at our department head meeting last week was, part of the problem is when you send them a letter, it takes a couple, 3, 4 days to get there, and so he did agree that his office, once we write a letter, once we get a complaint, we'll write the letter, the officer will deliver it that day, and then they've got basically 48 hours to take care of the problem before potentially public works staff show up and do it at an inflated rate and that type of thing. So again, we ask for the public's help. It's winter in Wisconsin. People want to walk and people like to get outside, and so just again, take care of your property and do the best you can. And if there are mitigating circumstances, let us know, and then we can at least, we have an idea of what we're dealing with here. But yeah, it's been problematic as well. So any other questions on that, or if any you guys want to add anything to it?
Question for Matt. Sidewalk, right at the end, not on the city street, on the city street but not, do they have to clear that?
It's just like your driveway, we plow it to the curb,
And they're
you gotta open it up to get out onto the street. So-
That's what I've been seeing, a lot of people shoveling the walk,
Well,
but not that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, I think this one complaint I was calling about her was exactly that. And then we had that nice weather over like Saturday, Sunday, and I think people, shoveled it out, and then it froze. And then it's a big solid
Now you
mess,
can't get it.
a foot from the walkway, and that clearly was a problem. And again, I think a lot of that probably got picked up then when we plowed here the other day, but yeah, even just a reminder that's the property owner's responsibility. It's not the, just because you push it in the street doesn't make it now the city's issue.
And it's so far into the street, I'm assuming, you got a couple feet out, you shovel it out.
Sometimes it
clear
is,
out.
sometimes it's a couple feet, sometimes it's right there, it's,
Yeah.
just kinda depends on the, on the plow truck driver, again, they can't tell exactly how far away from those curbs they are in those big trucks, so if they're within 2 feet, as you're shoveling 2 feet, it sucks, but when you're a plow truck driver, 2 feet's pretty good, But yes, those berms are technically part of, it's just like the end of your driveway. If they leave it 2 feet out, you gotta shovel that out too.
They push it farther, it just gets taller, just not as long.
Yeah. No, I've been walking quite a bit, and there's that, I
There
noticed
is
a
that-
lot of sidewalks cleared and that not.
No, I won't disagree with that. I know after the complaints, I drove around and kinda looked at that too, and there's quite a bit of, the ramp itself is bare, and then you got a 1.5 foot berm to climb over to get to the ramp.
Yeah, right by the fire hall.
So the question would be for John and JQ Public out there. So the question, if you have a concern about a sidewalk that you're trying to walk on and so on and so forth, what exactly should they do? Call the police department, file a complaint, that type of thing? So if you're a member of the public out there, what should you do?
I would encourage you to call City Hall. We're the ones that create the letter, then I contact City, and then we get the letter delivered.
It's to contact City Hall.
City Hall is the best way to do it.
So the
Really awesome.
process is contact City Hall develops a letter, City Hall lets the police department know, then citations, and then Public Works, so it all starts here at City Hall.
Okay. Just wanted, just saying, anybody who might be watching or about that sort of thing, Okay, any other questions on this, comments, concerns? Next, we'll move on to fire department. Do we have anything else?
No, I talked about the rural meeting, that's good there.
Anything else for ambulance?
Just one, quick one on the ambulance. So you back to rural, Mr. Hart, on the committee that allowed me, seeing that there were 7 townships there, I did reiterate that, I think I shared this with you, that Director Miller and I certainly want to make a concerted effort to get to the townships, any of our townships that are served by the ambulance, and just talk about basically some changes and potentialities that we talked during budget time of maybe some fee increases in the future, at least on a per capita piece. But again, to highlight the fact that that we're making all the calls and the extra effort that has been put in to get us where we are. So we'll continue that into 2020.
Any questions on ambulance? Hearing none, move on to public works. Engineers report. Do we have anything from Cedar Corp?
We're still working on the engineering. 3rd Avenue is about 80% done. Hopefully by the end of this week, the engineering for the CDBG portion will be close to 90%. They're working on Laneville and Dryer Street, waiting some news after tonight's meeting. And hopefully by the 15th of February, that'll be at about 80%. Looking to put all the projects out for bid on the 25th of February. Bid opening 2 weeks later in March. Cedar Corp will then go review the bids, and we'll have the bid awards back to the City Council by the 24th of March to approve the winning bid. If that's approved, we'll have pre-con the 1st of April, and then we'll move on with the project as soon as Mother Nature allows. We did have the open house last night for the CDBG portion of the project. We had roughly about 7 or 8 property owners that came in and looked over the plans in front of their properties, all positive. you know, all liked what they saw, had their typical access type questions, you know, how we're gonna get out of there, what we're gonna do, you know, and so we walked through a little bit of that with them. Did have a couple more phone calls today from people that couldn't make it last night, answered a few more of their questions, so overall, a good turnout, you know, there's 20 properties on that, so it's just, around 50% of the people have reached out, probably a little more than 50% of the people have reached out in some capacity over the last couple weeks, because I got some phone calls before the meeting, and the people at the meeting, and a couple phone calls today, so a little over 50% of the people have reached out in some capacity about their property. We will be having another open house for the Laneville dryer portion on February 18th. Those letters should be getting mailed out here pretty soon. I will give each and every one of you your invite for that one too, if you so choose to show up for that one. I'll get you the invite. But we will be having that February 18th, 4:30 to 6:30 as well.
So everybody liked it last night?
Yeah, everybody pretty much liked the design. Had no qualms with virtually anything that we were proposing, so.
That's good.
That's all for the engineer's report. Segue into the monthly update. Well, the only thing I got is our new plow truck, the F550. It's been delayed a couple weeks. The mounting bracket for the wing, the company shipped the wrong mounting bracket, so we're waiting for the new correct mounting bracket to be shipped to the installation company. So we'll just no big deal. Just delays us getting it by a couple weeks. So hopefully, I would think by the end of next week, I should have a final date. So that's where that truck's at. Otherwise, everything on our department is pretty status quo for the moment. So guys are working on, in between snowstorms, changing oil and gearboxes at the wastewater treatment plant, the water plant. This time of the year, we do get a lot of questions about, well, what do you do if it's not snowing? You know, we still have the same amount of work to do year-round in the water and the sewer plants and facilities in the winter as we do in the summer months. So just because you can't see them out there physically doing that, there's a lot of work in the water and the wastewater to keep the water system coming out the faucet and the sewer system going down the drain. So that's usually what the guys do in the cold times of the year, is the inside work and pump maintenance and meter maintenance and taking care of issues like that. So.
Anything else?
No, that's it, unless you got any questions for me.
Any questions on the monthly report for Public Works Utilities? I do have one question more your direction, as we're talking about our projects, is as far as meeting with Ehlers?
Yeah.
Start talking, have you
So
had?
it's on the radar, and nothing firm yet as far as, we got some time there, but we'll clearly be having else coming up, and again, borrowing resolutions and things of that nature, so.
And doing that to get that motion, so, okay. No other questions on the monthly report? We move on to review of results from the Laneville Avenue survey. They were all handed out. If you'd like to review what the results were.
Sure, and this is, so basically, it's in the blue in front of you, so basically it's just kind of a summary of, I think we gave you a copy of the letter at the last meeting, so this is just kind of incorporating again what the results ultimately were. As noted at the top, we mailed these to 38 property owners, and we heard from 26 of them. Basically 25 of them returned the survey. One called me up and basically voiced his concerns. So to summarize down below, they're under 1s, 2, and 3. Basically, 6 out of 26 felt that sidewalks added value to the neighborhood, 20 did not. Basically, we asked the question, are you favored sidewalks if you did not have to pay for them? One of those 6 basically changed the tune to yes, and then obviously the 19 no. But the all important question though of if you had to pay for sidewalks, would you still want them? And clearly that was overwhelmingly no. Only one person that responded indicated that they'd be willing to pay for them. Then we did have a comment section, and there were 8 people that returned comments that are summarized, that are verbatim below. I know 2 of those people signed, and I just noted that they, they didn't identify who they were, but that's clearly the case. And we could follow up with them if there's any specific questions regarding their comments or anything of that nature. But yeah, I mean, and some of the certainly some of the comments we've heard in the past from other parts of the city with, well, gee, the number of neighborhoods that have sidewalks and people still walk in the street. Clearly, currently the street is not in the best, the lane goes not in the best of shape for walking or strollers or kids learning to ride bikes and things of that nature, but it certainly will be a lot better when all said and done. So I think some of the folks are looking forward to that as well. Anything you have to add to that, Matt?
Nope, I think you hit all of the bulletin points on there.
Okay, so first of all, anybody have any questions about the survey results? Any other questions? I think it's pretty well set how many people responded, what the responses were. As I said, the one thing I was hoping that once we got these back, we could have a discussion to say, let's decide where we're going with this, with the sidewalk issue, so that obviously our engineering firm and our public works people can plan on moving forward with it. Because I didn't want to get into a situation where we were starting to meet with everybody saying, and then all of a sudden, maybe, let's get on with the decision as far as I was concerned. Obviously, we know that the sidewalk needs to run to the middle of the block between Dreyer and Lee. The idea was that we obviously would at least go to the, as I had brought up, it says go to the end of the block, and so at least it would go to Lee Street. So basically, we're saying is the decision making that we wouldn't continue with any sidewalk after Lee Street to, if that's, or if, again, see the results, see the feeling, where do we want to go? Open it up for discussion.
The survey says it all.
Yeah.
And I also believe some of the things that were said in there, we are widening the road, there will be more space on there, there'll be the nice road with curbs, curb and gutter, and all that other stuff, so I mean, obviously that will.
And the grant does state that you have to go all the way to the end of to the middle of that block, so you can't stop here.
No, that's
So you-
what we applied for.
Well, no, we could stop in the middle of the block.
No, I was talking about.
You can't stop at Dryers.
But the other thing I said too is that for that last little bit of that, what you were saying, again. And when
I'm
I'm
all
sitting
for
there
paying
saying,
for the
but
rest of
I'm
it,
sitting
I
there
was saying
saying,
maybe we can stop here would be
as I
fine.
said, and I've got no problem to say that we would continue it out and not charge those, because we're not gonna charge anybody else for sidewalks. But again, just to make it look the way, because again, as I said, I don't wanna listen for 20 years, people screaming about why you stop in the middle of the block. That's the other thing too.
And just real quickly, from a staff clarification, I think clearly we want to know whether you want sidewalks at all on Langeville, and again, I think the survey probably does speak for itself. But a specific yes, that you also want that extended, that middle of the block piece to Lee Street right now.
So clearly staff's recommendation for the next topic would be possible action on sidewalks to Lee Street, no sidewalks past Lee Street, no sidewalks south of Lee Street. Was clearly staff's recommendation.
So what you're looking for in a motion is that we go from the middle of the block to Lee Street, nothing more than that, and then Lane
Yeah,
Road.
pretty much, yeah.
Just to there, no sidewalk
yeah.
past that.
Basically, just sidewalks to Lee Street is all I really need in
Yeah, that's what
in
I
a
think,
motion.
I think what we would need, yeah.
And again, the sidewalk on the Third Avenue is required in the project.
I think we need to put something in there too that says, because there is no existing sidewalk now. Because who's to say that we're gonna have another project where there's sidewalk we're gonna assess?
Well,
And then they come in with something like this here, and then all of a sudden, they don't want sidewalk.
Well, to be clear, we were not talking about whether we're going to assess or not, we're not asking for that. So that's for another time, for another
But
time.
I'm just saying.
Okay. Any other questions? Would somebody like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we put in sidewalk as required to Lee Street, and we stop there. The rest of Laneville we don't do. Steve, what did you just say?
Well,
Because
That's
there's
no
no
existing.
existing.
Yeah,
sidewalk.
like I said, it's a different issue. That we put in sidewalk from the middle block on Laneville to Lee Street at our expense, and the rest of it, we're not putting the sidewalk in. Country Lane.
I don't, just gonna.
No, please, help me out.
okay.
But,
Yeah, let's
we're
make
not-
it.
Again, are we prepared, do you wanna for sure say that you're not paying for it? Or do you wanna wait until we talk about the entire special assessment
Not paying
process
for-
to make the determination of whether or not that little, that was what, property and a half gets any assessment at all? I would recommend you wait.
Okay, that's a
Not
separate
include
issue.
that in-
Okay.
in a
The
motion.
decision tonight, we're sitting there saying, basically saying, is that,
We put in sidewalk to Lee Street.
Correct.
and we're not gonna go, and then the assessment part will deal with the motion later,
Okay.
so on and so forth. So this, but basically, we'll know at this point here, it's gonna stop there. So all the design knows this is where we're going to be at.
Correct. I'll second the sidewalk to Lee Street, nothing more.
Okay. Okay. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion's agreed to. Next, we have continued discussion on the city special assessment process. What's our next step?
Well, I'm gonna turn this over to Matt very quickly, but, there just seemed to be a little bit of confusion yet from some of the questions we've got from council members, and, okay, let's make this crystal clear where we stand. And I think another piece of this is, back to our earlier discussion of, right now, we have an ordinance that is black and white, that says, you have two options. You either assess the way the ordinance reads, or you don't assess. We know we're gonna get into some discussions, probably in the next month or so, that, well, I'd like to take this out and things of that nature. The only way we can do that is basically we change the ordinance. So, we just kinda wanted to fill everyone in on that, and with that, I'll turn it over to Matt. And
Yeah, so whether we do the project or assess is kind of two different things. So we're planning on doing the project. Essentially, the city council has basically three kicks at the can to approve or deny the project. Usually one is the budget process for the funding. Part two is approving the engineering firm. And then part three is when we bring the bids back to you after we open bids. Once you approve the bids. Once you approve the bids, the project is a go, okay? So we essentially have until September, October to decide whether we are or are not going to assess properties. So we have time to decide whether we're going to assess. So your options of assessing are simply really two. You either don't assess nothing, all right, and continue with the project, or you assess, but you follow your ordinances exactly as they're written. Okay, if you want to change the way those ordinances are written, we essentially got probably about 4 or 5 months here to get that done if that's what you so choose to do. If you don't want to assess, if you want to assess nothing, then you don't have to rewrite your ordinances, you just choose to not assess. Does that make sense? You don't have to rewrite your ordinances to say we're not going to assess, you just choose not to assess. If you choose to assess, then you follow
And that only
the
makes sense.
guidelines
That makes
of the
sense. Yeah, you
ordinances.
said that, yeah.
Clear as mud?
Was the budget for this project taking into account any reimbursement from special assessment?
not this budgetary, only because we're paying for everything up front. We know that, so that's what we budgeted. So the assessment only comes in future years when we're deciding how much we have to put in funding for debt service repayment. If it's 100% or, so if it's a $200,000 debt repayment, but a portion of that special assessment, well, we only have to put this much on the tax levy because we know we've got this other revenue source coming in. So no, it doesn't affect it at all at this point, or for the 2021 budget.
And we won't know exactly the figures until we get the bids back.
Exactly, right, yeah, and to Matt's point of why we have so long to wait, because I mean, again, we're not saying, well, just keep pushing it off, but in short, you have the decision right up until the time we send those bills out to people, because it's an issue, if you do decide to assess, you send the bill out, they have the option to pay right now or the next tax year, and that would not be until the following December. And that's when our debt would be coming due, and so that also, again, there's no, if you guys choose to assess, there's no way it's gonna be on this December's tax bill. It won't. It'll be next year. So again, we have some time to determine these things.
So the city's special assessed on a road project at least once, you told me, right?
Twice that I heard.
Yeah, the city,
I kinda wanna know how many.
so to answer that question, the city has assessed every single road project it has done in the past that has not gotten grant dollars.
How many in the last 20 years?
In the last 20 years, let's see, 2009 was the last time we assessed anything, because that was the last project that we did that we didn't get grant money for. And there was, that was Second Avenue East over here. So there was a span for quite some number of years from 2000 and I was like 2000 to 2009 where we didn't really do any road construction. It was just surface maintenance. So in the last 20 years, I can say once, only because we have been lucky enough to get grants for all of our projects. But there's special assessments for Madison Street, not 2012, but when they put sidewalk in many years before that. There's special assessments down on 8th Avenue West when they did that project in the 90s. Special assessments on Prospect Street when they did Prospect Street. Special assessments on some avenues where they solely added sidewalk, didn't even do road construction, just did sidewalk projects. Those were special assessed. So everything that I can find shows that unless there was grant dollars to the project, there was a special assessment and the ordinance was followed via, or the special assessment was followed via the ordinance. It was 2006-ish, the ordinance was changed. The sidewalk ordinance of that portion was changed to change some of the language of how sidewalks were assessed. But since 2006, we've only had to use that once in 2009.
How many projects have we had with grants in the last, say, same time frame, last 20 years roughly?
12, 14, 18, 4. We roughly do a project every 3 to 4 years. So we've had 4 projects with grant, 3 projects. This will be the 4th. So we had Madison Street in 2012. We had Washington Street in 2014. We had 7th Avenue project in 2018, and now you have the 3rd project here in 2021. 3rd Avenue.
Those projects where we got grants, were they all CDBG grants?
Yes, they were all CDBG grants, which
Which says you can't assess for.
Yep, you can assess that. Now CDBG is what's called low to moderate income. They're basically giving you grant money for those areas because you have low to moderate income households who essentially can't afford to pay special assessments. Now, I'm not saying everybody can afford special assessments. That's not what I'm saying. So don't twist my words here. But essentially,
It's based on a percentage.
it's based on a percentage of
people
income,
that there.
and those areas qualify, so you get grant money and you don't special assess.
Right now with this project, if we go by with what our ordinance says and what our estimated costs are, I understand we'll know what our actual costs are. The special assessments are how much right now are we projecting?
$42 a linear foot.
And that was in the letter that we sent.
That was in the letter that we sent, yes.
42, okay, so what's the total? I mean, I don't need to know the exact penny. About 200 and some,
Sorry.
what was the total amount we were gonna bring in from special assessments
It's about
based on that number?
$238,000.
Okay, I just wanna get that out, it's about $250,000, okay, is what we would expect.
Now, again, those numbers are,
We get back over to
those numbers are most definitely inflated a little. That 42 a foot's inflated a little bit. It's hard to give you guys an actual number of assessments for the fact that when you assess restoration, that's assessed by the square yard, where you physically, our engineering company physically goes and measures the restoration of that property, and they just get 50% of the actual measurements of the restoration. Same thing with the driveway, it's by the square yard of the actual size of the driveway. So we're just kind of, right now, we're just using our estimates and lumping what we considered the amount of concrete we would need to do all the driveways and just transforming that into a linear foot. So it is a little high.
Yeah, so there's two estimates, because it's completely based on the final amount of area done, and also based on estimates of bids, not actual bids.
Correct.
So, and then when those come into focus, we'll know the exact amount. When we get the bids, we'll know the amount per square foot, but at the end of the day, each property won't know until we measure the final
Quantities.
the work that was actually done on that property.
Correct.
Again, it's all by an estimate at this point. Okay.
But you always want, and not trying to get too deep into special assessment, but you always want your initial estimate to be high, because you gotta have a public hearing, and you gotta inform the public of your initial estimate. At the end of the project, if the final bill is higher than your estimate, you have another public hearing to increase that. So you always want to, you always want to be on the high side for the
Let's not
public
do this
hearing.
again. Okay, so any more questions tonight? Okay, is there any other information that anybody on the council wants put together, whether it's, I mean, we have an idea what the numbers are, we know how the system works, as far as that goes. If there's any other information and you can't think of the question right now, get a hold of Scott or Matt, and they'd be happy to do that. The question is, we are required to have the public hearing. Now, I understand this is an open house coming up, presently scheduled in February.
Correct. So
That's just, again, it's just like we did here. It's just, hey, bring in the public, show them what we're gonna do. So this way, you know, we wanna obviously keep them as informed as possible. As far as this public hearing for a special assessment must be conducted by when?
Well, again, we have time on that as well, if we have, depending on how long we want to push this out. And so it's clearly, I mean, we're not gonna schedule a public hearing if we hear that, hey, maybe you wanna change our ordinance. So we're gonna have to coordinate all that, but in short, you know, basically it's roughly 2 months before we would send a bill out. So I mean, I would say back to our, at the very latest, probably late summer. To fall in line with everything else. So I mean, to that point too, Mayor, and it's a good point. So this meeting we're having coming up here, it's informational. This is not in lieu of any special assessment. This is, again, just kind of courtesy to a degree of, we want your input prior to any final decisions being made. We want to be able to explain this the best we can, and then, you know, we'll explain that to them as well. That again, you're going to have plenty of opportunity. If you're concerned about special assessments or the cost of the project to you, you're going to have plenty of time yet to address those as well.
Okay, so I believe after all this information, the question that needs to be asked, and again, we don't have to answer it tonight, but the question is, do we want to put it on? Is there a feeling that we want to look at what the ordinance says concerning how special assessments are done? If that's the case, then we put that as part of a future meeting to take a look at that, if there's interest of the council to do so.
currently, right now too, Mr. Mayor, just so you guys know, your ordinance states that you assess 100% of the curb and gutter, 50% of the restoration, 50% of the driveway entrance, and 100% of the sewer lateral. That's all that would fall in the special assessment on this current project.
That's everything that required.
There's other parts of the assessment, but those are the only things that pertain to this project.
This project that would go back to any property owner here, okay? So the question is, does the council, are there enough people on the council interested in visiting the ordinance? Or are we basically saying we're going to the next step of saying, okay, the ordinance is going to remain as is, and then we'll decide if, about applying it? So that's sort of, I think, what the question we need to answer.
I'm not against reviewing it.
No, I think we need, I'm in
I would
favor of.
look at it anyway.
Yeah. See where you're at.
Anything
One thing,
else?
Matt, that I'd like
Jim,
to,
I'll look, but how I feel about it, is how I feel about it.
But as far as we know, the ordinance, this ordinance, or the basic, this ordinance has been in effect except for a minor change. And the sidewalk part of it, you said '06,
Yes,
is what we figure, or about, yeah,
somewhere around '06.
somewhere around '06. Okay.
I personally see this ordinance just as another overtaxation on people, so.
one thing that if we are gonna review it, or at least the next couple of weeks, I'd like to know how many property owners have been involved in the grants the last 10 years since 2009 or
I'm making a note too, just bear with me.
What do you mean by,
every property owner that,
so how many
That was
paid
included
versus how many
in-
haven't, or?
right, so how many were in a grant that didn't have to pay?
So basically, you just wanna know how many property owners are on 7th Avenue West, which was the last construction project we did, and Washington Street and Madison Street. Okay.
I guess I go back to one of the residents said, I still believe the sidewalks, curbs, and.
And then
gutters
add
should be
this
paid
here
for
as
by the
well.
Entire city. That's kind of my viewpoint on it too, so. I think we overtax already, I think put it on the property tax of every house in town, that's the way it should be. That's me personally.
That would be my,
I think we already pay,
if we weren't gonna revise the ordinance, yeah, I'd say get rid of it completely.
I mean, we pay water and sewer bills to build the fund to take care of our sewer plant, which we need. I'm all for that, obviously, that's something we definitely need, but, and to ask every homeowner, every time a road goes in front of their house to pay for all of it is
It's just
kind of.
careful when you say pay for all of it, because they are
Clearly,
not
we're not
paying,
asking for that.
they're not paying
This
for
is-
the
this is
road,
future
they're,
council item, right?
they're not
Yeah,
paying
that's
for
what
all of
this.
it.
Okay,
Not now?
yeah.
We have to
it's just-
decide if
I just
we're
want to make
gonna
sure
decide
there's
if we're
no.
gonna- Look at the ordinance.
We've done a consensus that we're gonna do that, but
Discuss it,
now we're
okay.
debating it here.
Okay, so we'll put it on our future agenda.
And just, and to be clear also, you, typically this might go through Public Works, but sounds fair enough that you want to see it at full council.
I'll
Yes.
come and chat with you tomorrow some too.
Sure.
We'll do it as full
I'll come and chat
council.
with you a little tomorrow.
Yeah,
too,
come on.
When I have time.
Okay, that's what we'll do. Next, we'll move on to closed session. The council will convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 85-1C for the Wisconsin, for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data, and further for considering financial, medical, or social, personal histories, or discipline data of specific persons. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.